The Void Choir. A Sci-Fi Story. Part 1. The singing had already begun by the time Commander Rhea Sol stepped onto the bridge. It threaded through the hull in thin, quivering strands. Too faint to be sound, too deliberate to be noise. Pressure more than a tone. A vibration more than a voice. It pulsed in the soles of her boots as she crossed the deck. A slow, rising hum that made the reinforced glass of the observation pane tremble. Everyone felt it. No one wanted to admit it. "Report," Rhea said, though she already knew the answer. Lieutenant Mara Vance sat rigid at the sensor console, knuckles white around the armrests. "It's increasing in complexity. Same source vector. Same impossible physics." Rhea exhaled through her teeth. "Define impossible." Mara swallowed. "Sound. In vacuum." The hum swelled again. A long, low chord that seemed to pass through the ship's bones. The lights flickered. The air tasted metallic. Rhea steadied herself on the railing. "We're not dealing with sound. It's resonance. Hullborne. Structural." "Then why does it feel like singing?" Mara whispered. "Because it did. Because the pattern wasn't random. Because the harmonics rose and fell like breath. Because the intervals were too precise, too intentional, too alive. Because something out there was calling to them." Rhea didn't say any of that. She just turned toward the forward viewport. The stars ahead were wrong. Not wrong in the way of navigation errors or sensor drift. Wrong in the way of intent. They shimmered with a faint, rhythmic pulse. A slow contraction. A slow release, as if the void itself were breathing. The ship, Artemis 7, drifted deeper into the uncharted sector, its engines idling, its crew holding their breath. The singing rose again, and this time it harmonized. The first time they heard it, really heard it, had been 12 hours earlier. Faint tremor, a whisper of vibration, a pattern so subtle it could have been thermal expansion or micro-impacts. But then it repeated, and repeated again, and again, and then it changed. Patterns didn't change unless something was making them. Now, 12 hours later, the pattern had evolved into something unmistakably structured. A melody, chorus, a layered, shifting lattice of resonance that wrapped around the hull like a hand cupping an ear. Rhea forced her voice steady. "Helm. Status." Ensign Talos didn't look away from his console. "Engines on standby. Navigation locked. No anomalies in thrust vectoring." But what?" He hesitated. "The singing is matching our idle frequency." Rhea's stomach tightened. "Matching, mirroring, echoing. It's learning us." The hum rose again, and the deck vibrated beneath them. Rhea gripped the railing harder. "All right," she said. "We're not drifting any deeper. Bring engines to half. Plot a return vector to charted space." Talos nodded and tapped the controls. The singing shifted instantly. A new harmonic slid through the hull, higher, sharper, almost eager. Mara's eyes widened. "It's reacting to the engines." "Let it react," Rhea said. "We're leaving." Talos engaged thrust. The ship shuddered. The singing surged. And then the engines screamed. Not mechanically, not from stress or damage, but in response. Their frequency warped, bent, twisted into a new pattern that matched the resonance crawling along the hull. The void was singing back. "No," Talos whispered. No, it's syncing with us. It's syncing with the engines." Rhea felt the vibration in her teeth. Cut thrust. Talos killed the engines. The singing softened. The deck stilled. The lights steadied. Silence, or something like it, settled over the bridge. Rhea's pulse hammered in her throat. They were not alone out here. The briefing room felt too small for 12 people, but Rhea needed them all. The senior crew sat around the table, faces pale, eyes hollow. The hum was still there, faint, distant, but constant. A reminder, presence. Rhea stood at the head of the table. "Let's start with what we know." Dr. Ilya Sarin, ship physicist, rubbed his temples. "We know that what we're hearing is not sound. It's gravitational resonance." Rhea nodded. "Explain." Gravitational waves can pass through vacuum, but they're usually too weak to detect without massive equipment. Whatever is generating these waves is doing so with precision, with intent. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Rhea asked. Ilya shook his head. Natural phenomena don't harmonize. They don't adapt. They don't sing. A murmur rippled through the room. Chief Engineer Dax folded his arms. So what are we dealing with? A signal? A life form? Ilya hesitated. Possibly both. Rhea leaned forward. Meaning the entities, if they are entities, may not communicate through electromagnetic waves or chemical signals. They may communicate through gravity itself, through mass, through the curvature of spacetime. Dax snorted. Great. Space ghosts. Ilya glared. Not ghosts. Something far more complex. Rhea tapped the table. Let's stay focused. What do they want? Mara spoke softly. Us. Everyone turned. Mara's hands trembled slightly. The patterns changed when we powered the engines. They matched our frequency. They followed it. They liked it. Liked it, Dax said. Mara swallowed. Responded to it. Engaged with it. As if we were singing back. Rhea's jaw tightened. We're not singing. No, Mara said. But our engines are. Silence. Rhea looked around the table. Options. Run, Dax said immediately. Run where? Ilya countered. We don't know how far their range extends. Hide, Talos offered weakly. In empty space? Dax snapped. Brilliant. Rhea raised a hand. Enough. She turned to Ilya. Can we block the resonance? Not without shutting down the entire ship. Life support included. Can we mask it? Maybe, if we alter the engine harmonics. But that might attract them more. Rhea exhaled slowly. So we're blind, we're vulnerable, and we're being hunted by something that sings through gravity. No one argued. Rhea straightened. Then we need to understand them before they understand us. The observation deck was dark except for the faint glow of distant stars. Rhea stood alone, watching the void pulse. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, not really, but she could feel it. A slow, rhythmic pressure. A heartbeat in the dark. The singing rose again. Faint but unmistakable. A low, layered chord. A beckoning. Rhea closed her eyes. It felt like standing at the edge of a vast ocean, hearing something move beneath the waves. Something enormous. Something ancient. Something curious. She opened her eyes again. The stars ahead shifted. Not moved, shifted. As if something massive had passed between them. As if the fabric of space had rippled. Rhea's breath caught. A shape or the suggestion of one drifted at the edge of perception. Not light. Not shadow. A distortion. Curvature. Presence. The singing deepened. Rhea stepped back instinctively. The distortion pulsed. And then, impossibly, it harmonized with her heartbeat. She froze. The resonance wrapped around her chest, gentle but firm, like a hand pressing lightly against her sternum. A greeting, a claim, a promise. Rhea forced herself to breathe. You don't get to have us, she whispered. The resonance tightened. Then it released. The distortion faded. The stars returned to normal. But the singing did not stop. It never stopped. Back on the bridge, Mara's voice shook. Commander, you need to see this. Rhea hurried over. The sensor display was a lattice of shifting lines, gravitational waveforms plotted in real time. The patterns were complex, L-aired, recursive, alive. What am I looking at? Rhea asked. Mara pointed to a cluster of rising harmonics. This is the choir. The what? The void choir, Mara said quietly. That's what I'm calling them. Rhea didn't argue. The name fit too well. Mara zoomed in on the waveform cluster. These patterns are not random. They're structured. They're communicating with each other. Rhea frowned. Communicating what? I don't know. But they're coordinating. They're converging. On us. Yes. Rhea's pulse quickened. How many? Mara hesitated. At least 12 distinct signatures. Maybe more. 12, Rhea repeated. 12 entities. Minimum. Rhea stared at the display. 12 gravitational signatures. 12 cosmic predators. 12 voices in the choir. And they were closing in. The engines were offline. The ship drifted in silence. But the choir did not drift. They approached. Slowly. Deliberately. Hungrily. Rhea stood at the center of the bridge, watching the sensor display as the signatures drew closer. Each one pulsed with a unique harmonic pattern. A voice in the cosmic chorus. Talos whispered, "They're surrounding us." Dax muttered, "Like wolves." Ilya corrected him softly. "Wolves don't reshape space-time." The singing grew louder, not in volume, but in presence. It pressed against the hull, against their bones, against their thoughts. Mara clutched her head. "It's too much. They're overlapping frequencies." There. The lights flickered. The deck vibrated. The hull groaned. Rhea shouted, "Stabilizers!" Dax slammed controls. "Trying." The singing surged. A new harmonic cut through the others, sharp, piercing, dominant. The choir had a leader. Rhea felt it before she heard it. A deep, resonant pressure that made her vision blur. The leader sang again. The hull shuddered. The ship drifted forward, not from thrust, but from gravitational pull. "They're dragging us," Talos whispered. "They're pulling us toward them." Rhea's heart pounded. "Dax, can we break free?" "Not without engines." "Then give me engines." Dax hesitated. "If we power them up, the choir will." "I know what they'll do," Rhea snapped. "Do it anyway." Dax swallowed hard and activated the ignition sequence. The engines hummed. The choir reacted instantly. The singing sharpened. The harmonics aligned. The leader's voice rose. And the engines screamed again. Not in pain, but in mimicry. They were singing back. Rhea felt the blood drain from her face. "They're learning us," she whispered. "They're learning our voice." Ilya's voice trembled. "Commander, if they match our full engine frequency." Rhea turned slowly. "What happens?" "They'll know exactly how to find us. Anywhere. Forever." The singing crescendoed. The hull vibrated. The choir closed in. And the leader sang a final, rising note that made the entire ship tremble. Rhea stared into the void. "We need to run," she said. "But, Commander." "Now." Talos engaged full thrust. The engines roared. The choir screamed. And Artemis 7 plunged into the dark. Part 2. The stars stretched into thin white lines as Artemis 7 accelerated, the engines howling against the void. The hull vibrated with the strain, but the ship held together barely. Rhea gripped the railing, knuckles white. "Status!" Talos' voice cracked. "We're at full burn, but they're still behind us." Mara stared at the sensor display, face pale. "They're matching our acceleration. Perfectly." The choir's signatures pulsed on the screen, 12 gravitational distortions, each one singing its own harmonic, weaving together into a single, rising chorus. Dax slammed a fist against his console. "How the hell are they keeping up? We're pushing the drive past safe limits." Ilya's voice was barely audible. "Because they're not chasing us. They're following our voice." Rhea turned sharply. "Explain." "The engines," Ilya said. "Their frequency, their resonance. The choir is using it as a beacon, a guide." Mara whispered, "They're listening to us." Rhea's stomach twisted. "Then we changed the song." The engine room was a cathedral of metal and heat, the core thrumming like a heartbeat. Dax led the way, wiping sweat from his brow. "We can alter the harmonic profile," he said. "Shift the frequency. Mask it. Maybe confuse them." "Do it," Rhea said. Dax hesitated. "Commander, if we push the harmonics too far off baseline, the drive could destabilize." "How destabilize?" "Catastrophic destabilize." Rhea didn't blink. "Do it anyway." Dax nodded grimly and began rerouting power conduits. The engine hum shifted, rising in pitch, then dropping into a low, throaty rumble. The choir reacted instantly. The singing outside warped, confused, dissonant, searching. Mara's voice crackled over comms. "Commander, it's working. They're losing sync." Rhea exhaled. Then Mara screamed. "Wait, no, they're adapting." The choir's harmonics twisted, contorting into a new pattern that matched the altered engine frequency perfectly. Dax stared at the core in horror. They learned it. Instantly. The ship lurched. The lights flickered. The hull groaned. Rhea grabbed the railing. "What was that?" Talos' voice came over comms, shaking. "They've locked onto us again. Stronger this time." The choir sang, a rising, triumphant chord, and the void itself seemed to tighten around the ship. Back on the bridge, the sensor display was a nightmare. The choir had closed the distance. The 12 signatures pulsed like beating hearts, each one bending space-time around it. The leader's harmonic towered above the rest, a deep, resonant pressure that made the air feel thick. Mara's hands trembled. "They're forming a containment pattern." Ilya leaned over her shoulder. "A gravitational net." Talos swallowed. "They're hurting us." Rhea stared at the display. "Toward what?" Mara zoomed out. The answer made Rhea's blood run cold. Ahead of them, space rippled. A vast, circular distortion, like a whirlpool carved into the fabric of the universe. Pulsed with slow, rhythmic waves. A mouth, a nest, a gathering place. Ilya whispered, "A convergence well." Dax muttered, "A feeding ground." Rhea's voice was steady. "Options." Silence. Then Ilya spoke, voice hollow. "We can't outrun them. We can't hide. We can't mask our signature. They've learned us too well." "So what do we do?" Talos asked. Ilya looked at Rhea. "We change the one thing they can't predict." Rhea frowned. "Which is?" "Our silence." The plan was insane. It was also the only one they had. Dax stood at the engine core, hands hovering over the shutdown controls. "Commander, once I do this, we lose everything. Engines, power, heat, life support." "I know. We'll be dead in hours." "I know. And if the choir reaches us before we freeze." Rhea cut him off. "They're already reaching us." Dax swallowed hard. "On your mark." Rhea opened the comms. "All hands, brace for full systems shutdown. Secure yourselves. This is not a drill." The crew obeyed. Rhea met Dax's eyes. "Do it." Dax killed the engines. The ship went silent. Utterly, impossibly silent. The hum vanished. The lights died. The air stilled. The void pressed in. And the choir reacted. Their harmonics faltered, confused, searching, disoriented. The gravitational signatures wavered, their patterns unraveling. Mara whispered in the dark, "It's working. They've lost our voice." Rhea exhaled slowly. Then the temperature began to drop. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The cold crept in like a living thing, biting through uniforms, through skin, through bone. Breath fogged in the air. Fingers numbed. Teeth chattered. Rhea sat in the dark, listening to the faint groans of cooling metal. Mara's voice was weak. "Sensors are offline. I can't track them." Talos shivered violently. "Maybe they left." "No," Ilya murmured. "They're still out there, listening." Rhea stared into the darkness. Waiting. The cold deepened. Someone coughed. Someone else sobbed quietly. Rhea forced herself to stay calm. "We hold. As long as we can." Dax's voice was barely audible. "Commander, we won't last much longer." Rhea knew he was right. The cold was a predator too. And it was winning. The first sign came as a faint tremor. A soft vibration. A whisper of resonance. Mara stiffened. "Commander!" "Something's happening." Rhea held her breath. The vibration grew. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate. A single harmonic. Not the choir. Something else. Something deeper. Ilya's voice shook. "That's not them. That's something bigger." The hull vibrated again. A long, low note that made the air quiver. Talos whispered, "What is that?" Ilya swallowed. A beacon. A call. Rhea's blood ran cold. From who? Ilya stared into the dark. From whatever the choir serves. The vibration intensified. The void pulsed. And then, impossibly, the stars outside shifted. Not rippled. Not distorted. Shifted. As if something massive had moved behind them. Something older. Something hungrier. Something that had heard the choir's song and come to investigate the silence. Rhea whispered, "We need power. Now." Dax didn't argue. He slammed the emergency ignition. The engines roared back to life. The lights flickered on. Heat surged through the ship. And the choir screamed. The sensor display lit up instantly. The 12 choir signatures were in chaos. Their harmonics jagged, frantic, terrified. Terrified. Rhea stared. What's happening to them? Ilya's voice trembled. They're fleeing. Talos blinked. Fleeing from what? The answer appeared on the screen. The 13th signature. Massive. Impossible. A gravitational presence so large it warped the entire display, bending the grid lines around it. Mara whispered, "That's not a predator." Ilya nodded slowly. "No, that's the apex." The choir scattered, their harmonics dissolving into panicked, discordant shrieks. The 13th entity sang. A single, perfect note. The hull shook violently. Panels cracked. Sparks flew. Rhea shouted, "Talos! Get us out of here!" Talos slammed the throttle. The engines screamed. The ship lurched forward. The 13th entity sang again. Space folded. The stars twisted. And Artemis 7 was dragged backward. Not physically, but gravitationally. Pulled toward the apex like a leaf toward a whirlpool. Rhea's voice broke. "Dax! Overload the core!" Dax froze. "Commander! Do it!" Dax initiated the overload sequence. The engine core began to rise and pitch higher, 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 a shrill, piercing frequency that cut through the void. The apex paused. This harmonic wavered. Rhea seized the moment. Talos! Full burn! Talos engaged thrust. The overloaded core screamed. The apex recoiled. And Artemis 7 shot forward like a bullet. The ship tore through the void, engines blazing, hull rattling, alarms screaming. The choir was nowhere to be seen. The apex did not follow, but its final note lingered, a low, distant hum that vibrated in their bones. A warning, a promise, a memory. Rhea collapsed into her chair, chest heaving. Status. Mara wiped tears from her eyes. We're clear. No signatures. No pursuit. Talos sagged in relief. We made it. Ilya shook his head slowly. No, we survived. That's not the same thing. Rhea stared at the stars ahead. The void was silent again. But she knew better now. Silence was not safety. Silence was listening. She turned to her crew. We're going home. Dax nodded weakly. And then what? Rhea looked back at the viewport. At the stars. At the dark between them. They heard us, she said softly. All of them. Ilya closed his eyes. And now they know our voice. Rhea nodded. And they won't stop until they find us. The void hummed, faint, distant, inevitable. The choir was still out there, listening, learning, waiting, and the apex waited with them. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Void Choir. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.